Hello, hello. Welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and on Sundays I do a thing called Books and Booze, where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. In October, I read fun, spooky books, and so this week's book is Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween by Lisa Morton. The accompanying cocktail is a Trick or Treat Halloween cocktail, and it is 30 milliliters of rye, 60 milliliters of spiced pumpkin syrup, 60 milliliters of cream soda. Now, the recipe includes a way to make your own pumpkin spice syrup. I just bought mine off of Amazon because I wasn't going to buy a pumpkin and roast it in the oven and mash it up. I'm not that dedicated, and there was something easily available to buy. So let's do this. Halloween has a storied history that goes back a lot further than most people would realize. Now, historically, October 31st was Samhain, a Celtic holiday, which means summer's end. And that's it. That's literally all it was summer's end. It was a harvest festival, right? Summer ends, you harvest going into winter. And that's what it was for the Celts. And with the takeover of Catholicism as the primary religion of Europe, many holidays kind of eventually glommed together and became one. And she's got, All Hallows Day, Feast of All Saints, Martin Mass. All are celebrated in early November. Guy Fawkes Day, she mentions that in there because this all became part of an overarching holiday theme, if you will. Samhain eventually became Hallows Evening, or Halloween, which is the night before the Feast of All Saints. And this stayed even after Protestantism took over in England in the 16th century. Long story there, having to do with Henry VIII and his 6 wives. Well, 5 of the 6. The first one was Catholic, and they were all Catholic, and then Anne Boleyn. Anyways, so not the point of this book. This is a stirred cocktail, and he says to stir it in the glass, and then add the ice and the cream soda. So let me stir this up really quick, because it's not a very long review, so I want to get into the cocktail. Worried I don't have a big enough glass for this. I might not have a big enough glass for this, but it has a black ice cube. Black ice cube. Yeah. I made my black ice cube with edible black glitter. Yes, edible black glitter, so it's going to be all like fun and sparkly and probably do horrifying things to my teeth. Actually, probably not. Black has heavy bluing agents that will counteract the... Ooh, it fits but barely. There's my black cocktail. It's only black because of the ice cube, otherwise it would not be black. It would be got more of a pumpkin color. Pumpkin spice is tasty. So, historically, this is referred to as Halloween, at least as far back as Shakespeare, who refers to Hallowmass in Two Gentlemen of Verona, Richard III, and in Richard II, as well as Shakespeare's contemporary Sir Walter Scott, who wrote in Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border and Tamlane, which referred to Halloween and Hallowday as far back as 1548. I think Sir Walter Scott was actually the first one who called it Halloween, at least if I recall correctly from the book. That was the conclusion that I drew. So, well, that's lovely. That's absolutely lovely. So for thousands of years, this is a harvest festival. That's all it is. Right? There was no ancestor worship, no Day of the Dead. No Day of the Dead in Europe. Day of the Dead, she does go into Dias de los Muertos. Oh my God, my hands are all sticky now. As part of it, because clearly that's a very strong crossover. And I think she says that the Dias de los Muertos were initially celebrated in August, but pagan continuity theory, right? Our hypothesis, you have the Spanish Catholic came over, of course, suppressed all of the natives. And the natives, when they found the Feast of All Saints, they were like, well, that's close enough. Let's make this work. And they started making very elaborate Day of the Dead celebrations, Dias de los Muertos. So where things took a spooky turn and created this juggernaut of haunted houses and fright fest was 1762. Now, in that year, British military engineer Charles Valency did a survey of Ireland, and despite well-documented books by reputable linguists and historians charting that Samhain was summer's end harvest festival, he put a decidedly penny dreadful spin on it. Insisting that Samhain was actually a Celtic deity who was known as Balsab, Bal for Lord, Sob for death. Note that this is the only book anywhere ever up to this point that mentioned this. And in the interceding years, Valency's work has been thoroughly denounced and decried and proven to be basically the work of somebody of an early Twitter troll. All he wanted to do was make himself famous, and it worked, all right? He got well known as creating this, and then probably made life even harder for the Irish because, well, the British aren't exactly known for being kind to those who don't fit with their conformities. That is delightful. Oh, yeah. Well, black's a bluing agent, so hopefully when I brush my teeth, I'll be pearly white after this. Oh, my God. It's horrifying, though. It is important to note, let's see here, like I said, this is Valenci's work is the only place it ever references Baal's head, ever. But from this, churches, especially fundamentalist churches, have spent the following 262 years, from 1762 up till now, decrying Halloween as a satanic holiday that worships the dead. Not even 100 years after Valenci's work was denounced as having more nonsense than any man of his time, right? I mean, that happened in the mid-19th century. Yet the decrying of Halloween as satanic still continues to today, with fundamentalist religious swearing up and down that it's satanic and evil and the witches are coming to get your children.
I'll get you, my pretty.
Yeah, this is a good cocktail, but my hands are completely sticky now from all of the stickiness in there. Now, after introducing how Halloween came to be, Morton traces its progression from a Celtic holiday, which included bobbing for apples and carving turnips. Pumpkins were not yet there. Pumpkins are not native to Europe. They're native to North America. So they didn't have pumpkins to carve in Ireland when all of this was happening, right? When all of this went down. So that was America's contribution to it. Samhain wasn't just a chance to visit with the ancestors. This was a time when fairies, pukas, and witches roamed the land. All right, and witches are not a uniquely Christian phenomenon. All right, most cultures have some form of evildoer that could easily be ascribed to witchcraft. All right, I feel like probably within the last 20 years there have been people murdered for being a witch in certain African nations. I feel like I saw a news article about that. Certainly, witchcraft has spread in like wildfire across the United States as Wicca is a growing religion. More and more people ascribe to just being a witch versus, Wicca is an organized religion. I mean, if you recall from last week's book, right, Art of the Grimoire, there's a long history of witches with civilization. So it's not a uniquely Christian thing. And Halloween made the leap to America with the enormous influx. Oh my God, that was a horrible transition, Katrina. Clearly, I was very tired when I was writing this. So we have this long-standing Celtic tradition of, harvest festival at summer's end. And it kind of stayed there, and that's really all it was. I mean, they might occasionally have a party, but it was, again, celebrating the end of the harvest. It wasn't a trick-or-treat phenomenon. It wasn't a big holiday where everybody got together other than to celebrate the harvest. Until the mid-19th century, when the potato famine happened, and there were millions of Irish who fled the British Isles, fled Ireland specifically, and came to America. Now, if you'll remember when I read the book in April, The Immortal Irishman, the potato famine was between 1845 and 1852. It would take another 100 years before trick-or-treat really became a thing anywhere. Sticky hands. Initially, Halloween was just local get-togethers here in the United States, all right? We had this influx of Irish. Magazines started printing stories of what Halloween was and what kind of games you might have during a Halloween party, which included bobbing for apples. That's a very old game. A lot of fortune telling went into that. You might, bob for apples and find out the name of your true love or your intended. You could put chestnuts before a hearth and you name one Bob and one Larry, and whichever one cracked first, that was the name of your future husband, for example. So just fortune telling was very big in here. Not necessarily scary, not necessarily witchcraft, unless you're a Puritan. But still, this was harmless, right? And until it wasn't, basically. So they'd have these parties with bobbing for apples, with decorations that might include carved pumpkins. And eventually it became a night of mischief and mayhem for the youth of America as they would pull pranks. Pranks like removing all the gates from the houses in a neighborhood. And this was annoying and might result in loose livestock, but not dangerous or harmful. Until it was. And you get things like Devil's Night, Goosey Night, Mischief Night, Cabbage Night, Damage Night. And as they do, parents become concerned, right? Because their kids are normally really good kids. I mean, 120 years ago, parents actually cared if they were raising delinquents and good moral people. 120 years ago. Oh, there's that rye. That tastes good, though. All right, enough of the soapbox. Nobody gives a flying fuck if they're raising juvenile delinquents anymore. We're well aware of that one. Now, as Mischief Night gets more rambunctious, and we're talking major arson rambunctious, not just letting the livestock out, not just TPing a house or, throwing eggs at somebody's carriage. Have cars back then. I mean, arson levels of felonious behavior. Society started looking for ways to rein it in. And first, costume parties. All right. And they'd start doing parties at home, parties at church even, and eventually trick or treat, which made its first appearance, I think she said, around World War II. So, I mean, no joke. It's really not as old as we thought. It's not like this became a nationwide initiative. It might start in a single neighborhood, right? Or the single church group. Well, the parents are like, well, let's give them something constructive to do. We'll do this. We'll give them candy, right? And that's it. And then it just kept going, because as the people who grew up doing that when they were kids, they loved it. They had good memories. They wanted those memories for their kids. And so the next generation grew up with it, and so on and so on. It's passed down and become this massive juggernaut that has kind of spread across the northern hemisphere. And I mean that literally. It's apparently not a thing south of the equator. They just don't do trick or treat there. I mean, in Mexico you have Dias de los Muertos, but they don't really necessarily have trick or treat. If they do, it's more, they don't go house to house. It would be like business to business. And they might have things where instead of ringing on a doorbell and saying trick or treat, they'll have plates of specific food set out that it's deliberately there for kids to steal, right? It's approved theft, if you will. So, and it keeps the kids safe, and everybody has a good time, and nobody gets hurt, and nobody is, lighting houses on fire. So this was all an improvement over, 100 years before that. Now, Morton builds the history of this holiday from Summer's End Festival to global juggernaut, and includes branches of the festival like year-round haunted houses. Apparently those are a thing. I had no idea. We don't have one here in Reno. Although when she was talking about it, I could think of several locations off the top of my head that would be fantastic as year-round haunted houses. So, if anybody's in Reno and has the funding to make this happen, I have some ideas. Commercialization in theme parks. Disney, Knott's Berry Farm, Orlando Studios, they all have specifically geared haunted themes for the month of October, which they, of course, charge an upsell ticket price for, but people rave about it and think it's a grand time. So, hey, your money, spend it how you want to. And that's kind of where things were as of 2012 when this book was published. Now, it has continued to grow in the decades since publication. I literally just saw an Instagram reel yesterday showing a massive parade in Ireland where Halloween started. That's literally how they build it, home of Halloween, which good for them, because, hey, we wouldn't have it if the Irish hadn't immigrated to America. So I hold no grudges there, man. You guys deserve it. Yeah, my husband can finish that off. But there we go. My black ice cube, my black teeth. This book was not bad. It was a little repetitive, and the second and sixth chapters kind of repeated itself quite a bit. I do love how she mentions the books that contributed to the overall iconography of Halloween in the 19th century. Those books being The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving, Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe, and Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne. That one kind of surprised me, which gave us pumpkins, black cats, and witches, respectively, as the overarching theme of horror for Halloween. And as she points out, what's particularly interesting about this is that none of those books explicitly set at Halloween. They are set, at most, in the autumn of the year, with no mention of Halloween, All Saints' Day, or even October specifically. Just in the fall of the year, XYZ happened. And yet all three have come to be representative of this particular holiday, which was interesting. It does cover a lot of religious crossover, which is fair, since at heart it was religion that created this event. Like I said, she has a whole chapter on Dias de los Muertos, which often gets conflated with Halloween, but is very much its own festival. I mean, the two play well together, but they are very separate events. There was some good history in there. I mean, it like I said, a little repetitive, but overall her writing is a quick read. It flows well. She provides good information. It's well documented, well researched. It's well presented. And that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next Sunday. Bye.